So tell me about how it was with your parents and how they kept discipline in a house with as many kids as they had. How did they keep y'all in line?
You know, it couldn't be that we were naturally good because I haven't seen any kids that are naturally good. I've always heard that it's our nature. We're born in a sinful nature, and I was reminded you've never seen parents have to teach a child to be bad. He's naturally wants to be bad. You have to teach them to be good. And so I know we had to be taught to be good. But my daddy was a man of few words, I would say. You didn't hear him running around threatening us all the time. So we knew when he spoke, he meant what he said. So he didn't have to keep telling us something. And what I'm reminded of one time, everywhere my daddy lived, he always had a porch swing. He made himself a porch swing, a long swing with arms. It was hooked to the rafters with chains. And it was nice to sit out in the porch swing on a big porch, sit out in the porch swing, or he'd lay on the porch swing and doze off to sleep sometimes, laying in it. But my sister, just younger than me, Bobby, and I were down on the floor, and we started kind of scuffling. And he was laying in the porch swing. And he said, "You kids, stop. You straighten up. Cut it out." And that's what all he said. "You cut it out. Quieten down." And we did for a few minutes. And we started again. He didn't tell us a second time. He came down like that with a belt. After that, we did straighten up. But he didn't spend his time talking to us and telling us over and over to do something. We knew to do it. We knew that he didn't dilly-dally with us. He just whipped us, one time, but we didn't want any more, so we were quiet. And so we kind of knew that. We knew what he'd do. So, but my mother would keep a switch about this long off of a peach tree. They're kind of limber, but they'll sting. And she'd lay that up on the ice box, and we could see it. We could see that switch laying up there. And we didn't want her to use it on us. So we didn't misbehave. We didn't want her stinging our legs with that switch. I guess if we had wanted, didn't care for her making little stripes on our legs, I guess we could have done just anything we wanted to do. But that's what made us behave. They were they were loving parents. They didn't have to fuss at us because we wanted to do what they wanted us to do for the most part. And that's about what it amounted to, because they loved us enough that they wanted us to be like that. Parents, if they love their kids, they don't let them go wild. And when y'all are grown and you have children, what are you going to do with them? How are you going to treat them? If you had little boys and girls that were real cute, and they were yours to raise, how would you raise them?
Me?
Huh?
Me?
How if you were married and had children and they were your responsibility, which they would be, how would you treat them?
I'll let them do whatever they want, just
Huh?
as long as it's safe.
You'd what?
Let them do whatever they want, just as long as it's safe.
And do what they want as long as they were safe?
Mm-hmm.
You think kids know what to do? Or they have to be taught?
Role models like monkey see, monkey do.
You what?
Monkey see, monkey do. You ever heard that?
Well, you'd have to set a good example, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you want them to do like you do, you'd have to. That's a lot of responsibility, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not a parent.
You don't know what responsibility is?
I do.
Huh?
I do.
So you had so many brothers and sisters, but when it was time for you to have kids, you didn't have that many. How old were you when you started having kids? And what was that?
My first child was born when I was 20. Joyce was born when I was 20. And Larry was born a little, let's see, Larry was born then less than 2 years after Joyce. A little less than 2 years. And then 5 years later, Vicky was born. So,
I've heard some of their stories. It sounds like they were a handful.
well, the kids, their stories would be a little different than mine, I'm sure. They all had their different ways. All three of them had their different ways. Although Joyce and Larry were very close because they were close in age. And we lived not too far from your Aunt Opal, my sister Opal, at one time. We lived in Big Spring and they lived in Coahoma, and we'd be there sometimes. And Opal said that she would notice them. They'd be outside, and they were just out there just talking to each other. They just talk and talk. They were real close. And then Vicky came along 5 years later after Larry. So we were all looking forward to Vicky. All of us were looking forward to Vicky. However, the way Joyce told it recently, she and Larry were real close, and she told this at my birthday party, that when Vicky came along, she was so unnecessary. And that may have been the way they felt back then. They're both crazy about her now, but they may at 5 and 7, they might have been thinking that she was really unnecessary. I think that 5 and 7 years of age, you would have felt like that. If she broke up their closeness or anything, or interfered with their life in any way. But one time, Joyce took, she got some little blisters or sores in her mouth. So I took her to the doctor, and I don't know that I'd ever heard of this before, but the doctor said she has trench mouth. It was little blisters along in the trench of her mouth. And he gave her some medicine for it. I said, how would my kids get trench mouth? He said, well, you know how kids are. When you take them anywhere, and I've seen this, I saw it then and I've seen it since then. Not long ago I saw it. Kids will put their mouth on everything when they're toddlers even, in the store. They'll stick out their tongue and they'll run their mouth on any glass surface or anything. And I saw that not long ago up on the mall. A child was far enough away from the mother. She was trying to get hold of it, I think, but it was running its mouth along a glass surface like that at a store where, you know, it's been handled, it's got germs all over it. So the doctor explained, you know, kids, how they do. They don't always do this when they're away from you. They'll touch their mouth to everything. And that's how he explained that Joyce had plenty of chance of getting trench mouth. So he gave me a prescription and gave her a peppermint stick as a prize, you know, for having to go to the doctor. So she sucked on this peppermint candy and had it really sticky. And we stopped at Bobby's apartment on the way home. And she wanted to drink water. She went and got her a drink and laid her stick of candy down beside the water. And walked off and left it laying there. And Larry came along and, ooh, there's some candy. He was just a little boy. He didn't know any better. He couldn't even talk plain. He picks up the candy and starts sucking on it. That's a good find. Find a good sticky stick of candy. So he ate off of her candy. And then one morning after that, just a few days shortly after that, he came in our bedroom and he said, "It hurts. That hurts." I said, "Let me see your mouth." And I looked and he had these little blisters in his mouth. So we had to take him to the doctor and do the same thing with him. But I thought of that when I saw, up on the mall, when I saw this child with his tongue out, rubbing his tongue all down this face, out on the mall, down this glass case. And that's how kids get all these germs. That we wonder, well, how did my kid get that? You know, I keep them clean and I keep the house clean and I do this and the doctor told me how they got the stuff. And now I know for fact. And I forgot what you were asking me.
So you've got these 3 young kids. What do y'all do for a living at this point?
Well, I always worked, except when we had a new baby, when I was taking care of a new baby at home until I could leave it with a sitter. I always worked. I worked for over 50 years, just in between having 3 children. And I went to work like when I was 18 and worked till I was 71. Other than I worked solid through that time other than having 3 children. And I wasn't out all that long for having each one. But when I went to work, I didn't go to work the first year out of high school. I didn't go to work away from home. Uh, all three of my brothers that were at home, I had one brother that was married, and I had two brothers that were married at that time, and two that was at home that had never married. And those two at home were drafted into the service. Carol and Clyde were drafted into the service during World War II. And that left my daddy on the farm to work by himself. So I said, my first year out of high school, I was the only boy that my daddy had to help him. So I was home following him around like the boys had, doing with him what the boys had to do. And I remember we moved a haystack from my sister Oreen's and Jake, her husband's house. We moved a haystack from their house over to my dad's house and put it in his barn. So making trips back and forth in the wagon and moving that haystack was one of my first jobs when my first year out of high school. Not many people go from high school into their first job moving a haystack, but that's what we did. And then I had to go with him, fix fence, and do whatever he had to do after that. And then the second year, I wanted to go get me a job in McKinney, and a girl I finished high school with, the two of us went got us an apartment in McKinney and got a job there at the cotton mill. And when I told Papa I wanted to go to move to McKinney and get a job, he knew that I was his last help, and I wouldn't do it again if I had it to do over. You was asking about regrets. I wouldn't have done that again. I wouldn't do it if I had it to do over, knowing the way it was. He kind of looked down his nose and he said, well, I guess when the last one leaves me, I'll sell the farm and move to town. And my mother cried and cried. She said, my life will be over if I have to move to town. But they sold the farm and built a house in town. And she loved it. She had more conveniences, and she loved being in and having the conveniences she had. Electricity and electric refrigerator and washing machine and all that. And she was young enough to enjoy living in town. And she could walk. At that time, she could walk from our house uptown and stuff like that. And she learned to enjoy it. And she liked her neighbors. A lady lived in a big two-story house just on the corner from her, and she was a good neighbor, and she loved it in town. But that is one thing I wouldn't have left that first year if I'd have known how he would have been. But it was as far as my kids went, I enjoyed my kids, all of them. I take Vicky to church with me to my Sunday school class, and she was so cute, and she was big and easy to handle. That you can tell how cute she is. She was when she is like that picture up there. I never knew where she was in my Sunday school class. All my Sunday school class, they'd pass her around. They all wanted to hold her. And I looked behind me every now and then to see where she was. They'd just be passing her around because they all thought she was so cute. See your mama up there? No, on the wall. Over here. Isn't she cute?
Our mama.
Huh?
Our mama.
Your mama, that baby. Not your mama, your grandmama, Grammy.
Yeah.
But anyway, they all, I thought this all is something else.